I thought the core conflict of my life was over when I finished raising my children. I believed sacrifice had an ending. I was wrong. The specific detail that broke me didn't happen in a courtroom or during a family fight. It happened on a quiet Tuesday morning, standing barefoot on the cold tile floor of the same house I had paid for brick by brick. A house I bought by skipping meals, working double shifts, and saying no to my own dreams so my children could say yes to theirs. I was holding a cup of coffee when the doorbell rang. Not a knock, a doorbell. Polite, legal, final. The man outside didn't know me. He didn't care that my hands were shaking or that this house held every birthday, every scraped knee, every bedtime prayer. He just handed me an envelope and said, "You have 30 days." That was the turning point phrase. 30 days. 30 days to leave the home I paid for. 30 days to understand how love turned into paperwork. 30 days to realize my children's future was built on my past, and now they were erasing me from it. I paid for their school. I paid for their dreams. I paid when I was tired, sick, and scared. And now I was being told I didn't own the roof over my own head. The words in the envelope blurred as my heart pounded. My children's names were there, not as family, as owners. I felt betrayal burn in my chest. I felt humiliation crawl up my throat. I felt fear so sharp it made my knees weak. Had I signed something I trusted them with? Had I believed them when they said, "It's just paperwork, Mom"? Had love made me blind? The house felt smaller with every breath I took. The walls I protected for decades suddenly felt like they were pushing me out. And the worst part wasn't losing the house. It was realizing that the people I protected from the world had quietly learned how to use the world against me. I stood there, envelope in my hand, heart breaking in slow motion, asking myself one question I never thought I'd have to ask. How did paying for my children's future end with me losing my home? And what would happen when I finally confronted them? Before we continue, please leave a comment telling us where you're watching from and subscribe to Social Old Channel. We're creating a community of people who know that our best chapters can happen at any age. Now, back to the story. I didn't move right away. The envelope was still in my hand. The coffee had gone cold. I stood there, in my own living room, staring at the door like it might open again, and someone would say, "Sorry, wrong house." But no one came back. I slowly closed the door and locked it. The click of the lock sounded louder than it ever had before, like it was locking me inside, not protecting me. I placed the envelope on the dining table, the same table where my children once sat doing homework, the same table where report cards were opened, arguments happened, apologies were made. There was still a small scratch on the corner. My son made it years ago with a spoon when he was angry about homework. Back then, I laughed and said, "It's okay, it's just a house." I didn't know how wrong I was. I opened the envelope. The words were clean, cold, careful. No emotion, no memory, just facts. Eviction notice. Lawful owners. 30 days to vacate. And then I saw the names. My children's names. If you have ever felt your chest tighten so suddenly that you couldn't breathe, then you know that moment. My hands started shaking. Not crying yet, just shaking. My mind jumped backward through time. I saw myself coming home after double shifts, feet swollen, back aching, still standing in the kitchen to make lunches. I saw myself skipping meals because school fees were due. I saw myself saying next year to my own needs again and again. I remembered the day I bought this house. I walked into the bank alone. The agent looked at me and said, It's hard for a single woman." I smiled and said, "My life has been hard. I'll manage." And I did. Every payment, every bill, on time, because that's what mothers do. They don't keep score. As I kept reading the notice, something hit me. This wasn't sudden. This was planned. Slow conversations, soft voices, smiles. I remembered the day my son said, "Mom, we need to update some paperwork. It's for tax reasons." I trusted him. I signed. I remembered my daughter saying, "It's safer if the house is in our names." I trusted her. I signed. If you're listening right now, pause for a second. Ask yourself, who do you trust without reading the fine print? The house felt different that day. Smaller. The clock kept ticking, loud and steady, reminding me that time was moving forward, whether I was ready or not. 30 days. I walked through each room slowly. The bedroom where I prayed when money was tight. The kitchen where I cooked even when I was exhausted. The living room where we celebrated small wins. Every wall felt like it was quietly asking, "Where will you go?" I called my daughter. She answered, but her voice was flat. "Mom, I'm in a meeting. We'll talk later." Later. I texted my son. "Can you come by? We need to talk." Seen. No reply. That's when I understood something painful. When people finish using your sacrifices, they stop answering your calls. I wanted to cry, but nothing came out. Just silence. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound felt like the doorbell again. Every minute felt shorter. I kept thinking, should I confront them? Should I stay quiet? Should I leave with dignity? And then another thought came. If I stay silent, how many other mothers are living this same story? That night, I stopped thinking just like a mother. I started thinking like a woman, like a human being. This wasn't just about a house. It was about respect, about trust, about being erased. If you're still here with me, in the next part, I will tell you what happened the first time I finally asked my children the question I was afraid to ask, and how their answer broke me in a way I never expected. If this story feels familiar to you, type "I'm listening" in the comments. The next morning, I woke up before the alarm. I didn't wake up rested. I woke up heavy, like something was sitting on my chest all night and only moved when my eyes opened. For a few seconds, I forgot. Then I saw the envelope on the table, and everything came rushing back. I stood in the kitchen holding my phone, staring at my children's names. I wasn't angry yet. I was still hoping this was a mistake, some misunderstanding, something that could be explained with one honest conversation. That's the dangerous thing about love. It keeps giving people chances they haven't earned. I texted them both. "We need to talk. Today, please come home." No blame, no accusations. Just a mother asking. Hours passed. The house was too quiet. Even the refrigerator sounded loud. I cleaned things that were already clean. I folded the same towel twice. I kept checking the door. If you've ever waited for someone who knows you're hurting, you know how long hours can feel. Around 6 p.m., I heard keys. My son walked in first, didn't look at me right away, went straight to the couch like this was any normal evening. My daughter followed, phone in her hand, still typing. No hugs, no "Are you okay?" No confusion. That's when I knew. They knew. I sat across from them. The envelope was on the table between us. I didn't raise my voice. I asked one simple question. "Can you explain this to me?" My son sighed, not in guilt, in annoyance. "Mom, why are you being dramatic?" That word hit harder than the notice itself. Dramatic. I pointed at the envelope. This says I have 30 days to leave my own house." My daughter finally looked up. Her voice was calm, too calm. "Well, technically it's not yours anymore. Technically." If you're listening right now, notice the language. When people are doing something wrong, they hide behind words like technically. I felt my throat tighten. I paid for this house. My son leaned back. "You lived here. That doesn't mean you owned it forever." That's when something cracked inside me. I reminded them of the payments, the years, the sacrifices. My daughter interrupted me. "Mom, we helped you. We managed things. You trusted us." "Trusted?" "Yes, I did. And you signed," my son added. "No one forced you." There it was. Cold, clean, final. I realized this wasn't a conversation. It was a verdict. I asked them why. Why now? Why like this? My son shrugged. "We're building our future. This property helps." My daughter said, "You can stay somewhere smaller. You don't need all this space." Somewhere smaller, as if my life had also gotten smaller. If you've ever been reduced to a problem that needs relocating, you understand that moment. I asked, quietly, "What about me?" There was a pause, not a caring pause, an awkward one. My daughter said, "You'll manage. You always do." That's when I understood something painful. My strength had taught them I didn't need protection. I stood up. My hands were shaking, but my voice was steady. "I didn't raise you to treat people like this." My son rolled his eyes. "Mom, don't make this emotional." But it was emotional. It was my life. They stood up too, already done with the conversation. As they walked away, my son said something I will never forget. "Try not to make this ugly." Ugly? As if this wasn't already. They left the house. My house. Their house. I sat back down, alone. That night, the house felt empty in a new way. Not quiet, hollow. I looked around and realized something terrifying. If I did nothing, I would disappear quietly. No fight, no voice, no record. Just another woman who gave everything and ended up with nothing. If you're still listening, in the next part, I'll tell you about the moment I stopped begging and started documenting. Because silence protects the wrong people. If this conversation made your stomach drop, comment, "I felt that." That night, I didn't cry. I sat at the kitchen table with all the lights off except one. The envelope was still there. The same words. The same deadline. 30 days. I kept hearing my son's voice in my head. "No one forced you." I kept hearing my daughter's calm tone. "You'll manage." They were right about one thing. I had always managed. But this time, managing meant something different. I realized something very important in that silence. If I kept reacting like a mother, I would lose like one. I needed to start thinking like someone who needed proof. So I opened a notebook, not to write feelings, to write facts. I wrote the date I bought the house. I wrote the bank name. I wrote every payment I could remember. I wrote the day they asked me to sign documents. I didn't trust my memory anymore. I trusted ink. If you're listening right now, hear this clearly. When trust breaks, documentation becomes survival. I pulled out old files, receipts, loan papers, bank statements. Every paper felt like a small piece of my life that had been taken seriously once, even if my children no longer did. I found messages on my phone. "Just routine paperwork, Mom. Don't worry, it's safer this way. We're just helping." Helping. That word burned. Around 2 a.m., I made a decision I never thought I'd make. I called a lawyer. Not because I wanted revenge, because I wanted truth. The next day, I walked into an office that smelled like old paper and strong coffee. The lawyer listened without interrupting. No sighs, no judgment. When I finished, he leaned back and said something that shocked me. "You're not the first parent this has happened to." That sentence hurt more than anything else. Not special, not rare, common. He explained things slowly, about power of attorney, about property transfers, about trust abused legally. He said, "Love doesn't protect you in court. Paper does." If you've ever believed being a good person would keep you safe, this is where that belief breaks. I asked him one question. Do I have a chance? He didn't answer right away. Then he said, only if you stop being afraid of them. That stayed with me. Fear had kept me quiet. Fear of losing them. Fear of being alone. Fear of being called difficult. I walked out of that office different. Not loud, not angry, clear. Back home, I started taking photos of documents, of letters, of signatures. I backed everything up. Cloud, email, external drive. It felt strange, like preparing for a war I never wanted. That evening, my daughter called. Her voice was sweet again. "Mom, are you okay?" I paused. "Yes," I said. "I'm organizing things." She laughed lightly. "That's good. Just don't make this harder than it needs to be." Harder. They still thought I would fold. After the call, I wrote down the time, the date, and what she said. I wasn't paranoid. I was awake. If you're still listening, understand this. The moment you start keeping records, the power balance shifts. I wasn't fighting yet. I was preparing. And preparation scares people who depend on your silence. In the next part, I'll tell you what happens when my children realized I wasn't leaving quietly and how their tone changed overnight. If you believe documentation can save lives, type "write it down." The change didn't happen all at once. It started quietly. My son stopped avoiding my calls. My daughter started checking in more often, not out of care, out of concern. They could feel it. Something had shifted. I didn't argue, I didn't beg, I didn't accuse. I stayed calm, and that scared them more than anger ever could. One evening, my son came over unannounced. He stood in the doorway like he used to when he was younger, except this time there was no guilt in his eyes, just calculation. "Mom," he said, forcing a smile, "we should talk." We sat in the living room, the same couch where he once cried when he failed an exam. I listened. He said things slowly, carefully. "We don't want this to get messy. We're family. Court will just drain everyone." Family? People always use that word when they want you to back down. I nodded. "I agree," I said. He relaxed. Then I added, "That's why I spoke to a lawyer." His face changed. Just for a second, but I saw it. If you're listening right now, pause here. People reveal themselves when they realize you're no longer alone. My son leaned forward. "You didn't need to do that." "I did," I replied, "because I don't understand what happened and I need clarity." He tried a different approach. "Mom, remember everything we've done for you? The errands, the bills, the help." Help again. I pulled out my notebook, not to threaten, just to reference. "I remember everything," I said. "That's why I'm writing it down." He went quiet. That night, my daughter called. This time, her voice wasn't sweet, it was sharp. "You're involving outsiders now?" Outsiders? That's what they call accountability. I told her calmly, "I'm involving protection." She laughed nervously. "You're overreacting." There it was again, overreacting, dramatic, emotional, words used to make women doubt themselves. I didn't argue. "I just want everything to be transparent," I said. "That's all." The next few days felt heavy. Messages started coming in. "We can extend the timeline. Maybe you don't need to move right away. Let's find a solution." No apologies, just adjustments. If you've ever noticed people softening only when you stop being convenient, you understand this stage. They weren't scared of losing me, they were scared of losing control. I started receiving advice from relatives. "Don't ruin your relationship. Children make mistakes. Why involve lawyers? No one asked me how I was sleeping. Silence protects the system that hurts you. One afternoon, I overheard my son on the phone. Yeah, she's documenting everything. That sentence told me everything. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't alone. I wasn't powerless. I was being watched. That night, I sat in the same chair and realized something important. They thought time was on their side, but they were wrong. Because every day they delayed, I became stronger. If you're still listening, the next part is where things turn public and the story leaves the house. If staying calm in chaos is strength, comment calm is power. The letter arrived on a Thursday, not the eviction notice. Something different. Official, stamped, addressed to all three of us. My lawyer had sent it. I didn't tell my children it was coming. I didn't need to. By that point, I had learned something important. People who rely on control panic when they lose information. The letter wasn't aggressive. It didn't accuse. It asked questions about dates, about signatures, about intent. That's what scared them, because questions require answers. That evening, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. First my son, then my daughter, then relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. The story had started moving faster than they planned. My son's voice was tight. "Why are you doing this?" I asked calmly. "Why did you?" Silence. That silence felt heavier than shouting. My daughter tried a different approach. She came over with coffee, sat close to me, touched my arm. "Mom, this doesn't have to go further," she said softly. "We can fix this privately." Privately. That word meant quietly, without witnesses. I looked at her and realized something painful. She wasn't worried about me. She was worried about exposure. I asked her one question. "Were you ever going to tell me the truth?" She didn't answer. If you're listening right now, understand this. When someone avoids a simple question, the answer is already there. The next day, the calls turned colder. "You're embarrassing us. You're making us look bad. What will people think?" Not once did anyone say, "I'm sorry." I started receiving messages from family members. "Why are you doing this to your own children? Just let it go. They're young. Young enough to take my house, old enough to know better." I walked into the bank that afternoon, the same bank where years ago I had been told it would be difficult for me. This time, I asked for records. They printed everything, every payment, every transaction. My name was there, over and over again. Proof doesn't shout, it waits. When I got home, my son was there, angry this time. "You're choosing strangers over family," he said. I looked at him calmly. "No," I replied. "I'm choosing truth over silence." He scoffed. "You're going to lose." Maybe, but I wasn't losing myself anymore. That night, something changed inside me. The fear loosened its grip. I wasn't fighting to keep a house anymore. I was fighting to be seen. If you're still with me, in the next part, I'll tell you about the day the story stopped being private and why, once the truth is public, it can never be buried again. If you believe silence helps the wrong people, type "Truth Matters." The next morning, the house felt different. It wasn't quiet, it was tense, electric, like the air knew something had shifted. I sat at the kitchen table, looking at my notes, my bank records, my copies of every paper I had ever signed. The envelope with the eviction notice sat there, folded neatly, a reminder of why I was doing this. My son came in first. He didn't knock, didn't say hello, just walked in and stood in the doorway. "Mom," he said, voice low but sharp, "we need to talk seriously." I gestured to the table. "Sit. Let's talk." He sat, but there was no apology, no guilt, just anger carefully controlled. "You're making this a bigger deal than it is," he said. You're embarrassing everyone." I let him talk. I didn't interrupt, I didn't react, because by now I had learned something important. When someone is trying to provoke you, silence and calm are more powerful than yelling. I opened my notebook, pointed to dates, payments, messages. "This is real," I said softly but firmly. "I didn't make this up. I didn't exaggerate." He leaned back, shaking his head. "You're trying to turn everyone against us." I paused. Then I said, "I'm not trying to turn anyone against anyone. I just want what's rightfully mine, and what I built for this family to be acknowledged." The room was quiet for a long moment. I could hear my own heartbeat. Then my daughter walked in. She carried her phone like a shield. Her voice was sharper than her brother's. "Mom, you're making a huge mistake." I looked at her and said, "I've already made the choice to stand for myself. I've documented everything. I'm not leaving. I'm not hiding." That word, hiding, made them flinch. If you're listening, understand this. People who manipulate rely on your fear. The moment you stop hiding, the balance shifts. They realized I wasn't going anywhere, not quietly, not without being heard. I spent the next few days preparing for the next stage. Emails to lawyers, copies of all documents, detailed timelines, photographic evidence. I even wrote down their excuses and the exact words they had used. Every time they tried to contact me with threats or guilt, I stayed calm. I repeated their words in my notes. I wrote them down, like a witness recording the scene of a crime. And slowly I noticed something terrifying for them. They were losing control. The first text from my son came late one evening. "I think you're serious." Yes, I was serious. They weren't used to me being serious about myself, not just about the house, about me. The next day, my daughter called. Her voice was quieter, hesitant. "Mom, we can talk. Can we just talk?" Finally, they were realizing the truth wouldn't be buried. The walls they built around manipulation were starting to crack. And that's when I understood something I should have known all along. Truth, once it steps into the light, can never be hidden. If you're still with me, in the next part, I'll tell you how their attitude changed completely when the story became public, and how people around me started noticing what had really been happening all these years. If you've ever felt powerless but then decided to stand, type "I'm standing." The first sign that things had truly changed came from outside the family. A neighbor stopped me in the parking lot and asked quietly, "Are you okay?" That question caught me off guard. People had seen my children come and go. They had noticed the tension, the raised voices, the sudden visits. I realized then this was no longer invisible. A few days later, a relative called, not to lecture me, to listen. "I heard some things," she said carefully. "Is it true they're trying to make you leave?" I didn't defend myself. I didn't explain too much. I just said, "Yes." There was a pause. Then she said, "That's not right." Those three words mattered more than she knew. When the truth starts spreading, it doesn't explode. It travels quietly, from one concerned voice to another. My children felt it immediately. My son showed up that evening, irritated but uneasy. "You've been talking to people." I looked at him calmly. "I've been telling the truth." He frowned. "You're turning everyone against us." I shook my head. "No, I'm letting people see. There's a difference." That's when his anger finally slipped. "Why couldn't you just stay quiet?" he snapped. There it was, not concern, not regret. Silence was what they needed from me, and I had taken it away. My daughter joined us shortly after. Her tone was different now, less confident, less sharp. "Mom, this is getting out of hand," she said. "People are asking questions." I asked her something I had been holding inside for weeks. "Did you think no one would ever ask?" She didn't answer. If you're listening right now, understand this. Wrong actions survive only in darkness. The conversation that night was the hardest one. No shouting, no tears, just truth sitting in the middle of the room. I told them how it felt to open that envelope, how it felt to see their names as owners, how it felt to realize love had been used against me. For the first time, they didn't interrupt. My son finally said, "We didn't think you'd fight." That sentence explained everything. They had counted on my silence, my patience, my habit of letting things go. I stood up slowly. "I didn't raise you to win at my expense," I said, "and I won't disappear to make you comfortable." Something broke in that moment, not loudly, but deeply. They left without threats this time, without confidence, and I knew the confrontation had changed the balance forever. If you're still here with me in the final part, I'll tell you what happened when everything reached its breaking point and how this story ended, not just for me, but for my children too. If you believe truth always surfaces, type "truth wins." The final moment didn't come with shouting or slammed doors. It came quietly, a call from my lawyer on an ordinary afternoon. "I have an update," he said. My hands were steady this time when I held the phone, not because I wasn't scared, but because I was no longer powerless. He explained everything slowly, about the documents, about how trust had been misused, about how consent given without full understanding mattered. Then he said the words I had prepared myself not to hear. "You don't have to leave." I sat down. Not because my legs gave out, but because something heavy finally lifted. The eviction notice was challenged. The transfer wasn't as clean as my children believed. Paper had spoken. That night, my children came over together. No anger, no confidence, just silence. My son spoke first. "We didn't think it would go this far." I looked at him and said, calmly, "I didn't think my children would take my home." My daughter's eyes filled with tears, real ones this time. "We were wrong," she whispered. That apology didn't erase the damage, but it cracked the wall. We talked for hours, not as enemies, not as a happy family, as people facing consequences. They agreed to reverse what they could, not out of kindness, but because the truth had made retreat their only option. In the days that followed, the house felt like mine again, not because of papers, because of peace. I changed the locks, not out of revenge, out of boundaries. Some relationships changed forever. Some trust never fully returned, but something else was born in its place: self-respect. If you're listening right now, I want you to hear this clearly. Being kind does not mean being weak. Being a parent does not mean being powerless. Love should never require erasing yourself. I didn't win because I fought harder. I won because I stopped disappearing. This story isn't just about a house. It's about what happens when people mistake your silence for permission. And if you're in a situation where your voice feels small, remember, the moment you speak, everything shifts. If this story gave you strength, type "I choose myself." Share the story with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, your life, your sacrifices, and your dignity matter.